Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And in today's video, we're going to be covering the number one thing that is preventing you from improving. And this might be really in any avenue of life, because this is something that even professional athletes, professional musicians will apply to their craft to improve their skill. So if you're somebody who's been playing arena admittedly for years and you just feel like you're spinning your wheels, you're not getting anywhere, you're not climbing, or maybe you're constantly in a roller coaster of up and downs of your rating and you can't just figure out how to break through and push to the next level and continue to improve, well, that one thing that is holding you back is VOD review. It's going back and looking at your gameplay. It's recording yourself and looking at all of the fine details. So in today's video, I'm going to be going over a VOD of my gameplay where I got brutalized. I got destroyed. All I wanted to do was kind of forget this lobby existed, put the blame on the classes being imbalanced, and not any personal responsibility whatsoever. But today for you, I am going to go back. We're going to look at any possible cringy mistakes. We're going to look at every little detail so we can take the best of this situation and try and look to improve our gameplay moving into the future. And that is the thing that you should be doing. If you want to submit gameplay to me to watch on my stream, check out my stream, linked in the description down below, and follow. But here in this position, you can see the priest is in a sap. My rogue is currently stunned, so the rogue is likely going to be a target. We're going to open the fight with Innervate Overgrowth, Life Bloom ourselves to amplify our hots onto that target, and we can see evasion and we get dispelled from trap. We're going to Cenarian Ward and Iron Bark. Now, perhaps this Iron Bark, look at this right here. Perhaps this Iron Bark, not 100% necessary, given the fact that the rogue already has evasion. So this is where you want to start being a little bit critical of your gameplay of even the kind of small details. Evasion would allow the rogue in this situation to dodge all of the attacks from most of the demon pets, assuming that he's facing them, as well as a lot of the damage from the hunter. So using Iron Bark here may be unnecessary. We'll continue watching to make sure. We lob out our Adaptive Swarm. We get a good Swiftman. We actually don't even get a Swiftman extension here. We root all the pets. This is a really good thing to do against any sort of pet-based classes. Once that giant army of pets is out, primarily the Pit Lord against the Demo Lock or the Bestial Wrath here of the Hunter, rooting or AoE crowd controlling is a good move. So do look at the things you're doing right as well in your gameplay. Congratulate yourself on those things. Celebrate those things. Very important to do that so that you're continuing to replicate them moving into the future. But because that Iron Bark and usage of evasion earlier might end up costing us a lot of cooldowns later on. Now our rogue is looking pretty stable, so we're going to start hotting up our warlock, start lobbing out a couple of regrowths towards them as we're rooting the priest here. And the main reason we're rooting the priest is so that they don't walk up to us and get a fear. We can utilize the instant entangling roots in our tree farm, which is going to be really nice. We're going to continue to reposition away from the priest so we can avoid being crowd controlled for as long as possible, keeping our life bloom on the rogue, who I'm expecting to be the primary target. Now we're into our scatter shot. Our rogue's into a stun. We get dispelled out of the freezing trap. We've maintained our life bloom, so we should be in a decent place of survivability. Immediately out of this, we're going to Cenarian Ward. This is the correct decision, and we're working towards getting our Swiftman here to extend it. We can use Nature Swiftness to bounce him back up. Now, we could be a little bit critical here. Was that Nature Swiftness 100% necessary? Some of the major advantages of using Nature Swiftness very early is that you have a lot of cooldown reduction around it, and we're going to use our Tranquility here pretty soon to try and reset our Tree of Life as well as our other cooldowns. So rotating that one up, given the fact that the enemy hunters use Bestial Wrath, I think is a good maneuver. And you can see once again, Bestial Wrath is up. We're using our AoE roots here to crowd control the pets. So far, I feel like we are playing this round pretty well. Offensively, maybe we could be squeezing in a little bit more damage, so we have to move forward. We jump forward, we get a bash onto the priest. This is a good point to go offensive. We use Tranquility, as I said, to reset all of our cooldowns. We're immuning crowd control, we immune the fear. We can reset our overgrowth, we've reset our Cenarian Ward, so now we can get all those powerful cooldowns rolling onto the rogue, keeping them aggressive and keeping them pushing forward here onto the warlock and the hunter. We get stunned into a trap. Hopefully our warlock will dispel us. I do recommend you tell the warlocks you're playing with to play an imp to dispel you out of freezing trap against hunter. This is a really good way to deal with their crowd control. Here we've got the priest in a fear, but our rogue is down at half health. I see a kidney shot, so I'm going to use Nature Swiftness just to keep them topped off right before we get feared. Now, did I need to trinket? This is what I mean by, like, these are the things you need to look at in your gameplay. This is why it's going to be useful to you, because this is a really big deal, is when do you use your trinket? We're at 35% dampening. the enemy pets are empowered here with Bestial Wrath. Our rogue has no personal defensive cooldown. So choosing to sit in that fear could put us behind. And given the fact that our warlock is able to dispel trap here with imp, trap is going to be a lot less threatening of a crowd control. So in this position, I think it is somewhat justified to do it, to use the trinket here to avoid crowd control. Now they're switching targets. They're going after the warlock more. So we're going to have to Cenarian Ward. Our warlock gates towards the pillar here to line of sight. We're switching the life plumes now over to the warlock, extending all those hots onto him, and then going back to the rogue who's in the middle of the map, immediately paying attention to the positioning. Rogue's pushing forward. He's getting very low here. We walk into a scatter. Now, that trinket that I used earlier on the fear could have been used on this scatter. Just saying, it could have been used on this scatter. We end up getting trapped here. I think we get feared. We get dispelled out of the fear, but look how far behind we are. We're so close to this Nature's Swiftness. We're so close to a lot of cooldowns in this position. We kidney shot the hunter. We get a fear onto the priest. And right at the last second, our warlock goes down. So could we have done anything? Look how close we are to all of our cooldowns in this position. NS is now up. Adaptive is up. Cenarian Ward is now up. Maybe this is the cooldown reset. We had coil here from the warlock, which is the only thing. So sometimes you do want to blame your teammates, but you've got to look at like the whole picture here. Like, what could I have done leading up to this moment? I could have had a trinket for this scatter shot to be able to get out of crowd control. Perhaps if I didn't use NS in that position here, if we looked a little bit earlier, I used Nature's Swiftness. I think this is a little bit too far earlier. I used Nature's Swiftness here, which put it on about a minute cooldown. It was kind of just like rotational, like, oh, Bestial Wrath's up, I'll get a big heal. But if I had saved that as an emergency recovery, and if I still had my trinket in this position, we get Cenarian Ward onto the warlock here. They're fully hotted. We've got full hots on the rogue. We're in a really good position here in terms of recovering, but dampening is just getting very high. And because now, if we look at our cooldowns, like, we don't really have any cooldowns to trade at the moment. So honestly, we just shouldn't be aggressive. And maybe this is just a solo shuffle thing, because running in when your healer has no cooldowns and you have no cooldowns, it's a really dangerous thing to do. We also have wall. So maybe coming up with some, I'm trying to like take complete personal responsibility here, but when I go into a freezing trap like this, getting a macro or something that can type /yell personal defensives or something. Maybe they don't read it, but it's better than doing nothing, right? This is what I mean, saying like, look for any possible improvements that you can make. If I had not used NS earlier, I'd still have it right now. We're kind of lucky to get dispelled out of this fear, so we could have trinketed here rather than trinketing that fear earlier. And if we hadn't used NS, but look how close it is, man. I feel like this is so narrow of a gap here. We get really close. Maybe we could have rooted the pets. We have a root up right now. We could have rooted the pets potentially to try and get them off their target. But this wall was way too late. This wall was way too late. Walling at this point when we're at 50% dampening is just not, like, normally walling this late is not going to work out, right? This is just not going to work out. So this is why it's good to look back, see what you could do personally. In this situation, it's hard for me to take complete personal responsibility for this, but what I've learned from this is to maybe get some macros that is going to type /yell to your partners to tell them, hey, use personal defensives, because maybe they're just not aware of it. They don't know that they're dying. Normally in threes, you'd be able to have voice comms with them. So getting some sort of macro that can do that would be better for being able to acknowledge to them that they need to make some sort of trade, right? Like as a warlock, if you're out of position here of your gateway, we had coil to heal, also evasion coming up, which would have bought me time to get to all of my cooldowns. So it's kind of like tripping on the finish line there at the last second in this match specifically. But for myself, again, I've been really struggling at the moment to get some good lobbies. So that's why I wanted to look at this one specifically and see what we're doing in this one. Like this one, we die instantly, it looks like. So what went wrong in this lobby? What can we take away from this? We've got hots up under the warlock and the hunter, get a triple regrowth, and then we want to go into stealth to avoid being sapped by the rogue. Rogue looks like he ends up walking into the flare, so this should be a decent start for us. We can open with a bash onto the rogue, drop some damage onto the rogue while they're stunned here, and there's no damage going out. We'll life bloom ourselves to amplify our hots onto the target they're going after. I see the warlock currently stunned, but it was not kidney shot. So if a rogue has not used kidney shot, there's still a good shot that they might use it on you. Ironically, use the shot on you. So we get blinded here, and our hunter has Roar Sacrifice, and we're trying to sit the blind. And the main reason we're trying to sit the blind is because the rogue hasn't used kidney shot yet, which means if I trinket, one, in this situation, he's already vanishing. So there's a good chance he's going to sap my trinket. And then two, we could just get kidney shot and die. Against an assassination rogue, it's very easy, especially with how close we are to the fight. Is there any way that I could have been in a better spot? is now the next question, right? So the thing against Demonology Warlocks is their pets AoE, and they'll break crowd control. They'll break a blind. So if I was standing on top of the person being attacked, there is a high likelihood that this blind will break. However, it means that I'm going to be more susceptible to being attacked by the rogue. Maybe those cons or those pros outweigh those cons. So if there's a Demonology Warlock, I should play closer to my teammate so that crowd control will break. But as a result of trying to sit this blind, my teammate just does not trade the cooldowns necessary. But if we look at the situation, right, there's a Pit Lord. Demo Warlock is fully empowered, right? He's power infusion. There's a Tyrant here on the other side. Like, this is basically the most amount of damage this team can do in the game. So maybe I do just trinket the blind immediately and try and be in bear form instead. And this is why, like, you don't want to blame your teammates, but it's like, what is the best move here? Typically, you do want to trinket blind, especially as a healer. But if you're this close to the rogue, it opens you to being swapped. So maybe trinketing the blind and then pre-hotting myself, using Ironbark Send Word here onto the hunter, and then the hunter can use cooldowns on the death mark or something like that. This is a really tough situation that I'm trying to even break through right now. I feel like in other VODs, it'll be a lot less tight of a decision in terms of your own improvement for your own play. But in this video here, we've got our hunter hotted up. We're moving forward, overgrowthing our rogue here behind the pillar. We can see the warlock getting in the middle of the map. We want to dispel these coils, but they're a little bit too far away. We got Cenarian Ward extended here onto the rogue right before we get stunned, which is very ideal. We could root all of the pets here. You can just see this army of pets getting empowered, and we're honestly not rooting it. We get broken out of the fear, but look see the positioning difference? I was standing on top of the pets, and it broke me free from crowd control, which is a lot more threatening than not being crowd controlled, especially when you have all your cooldowns up. So I do think this takeaway from this VOD is stay near the pets of the warlock to break yourself out of crowd control, so that way you can more freely heal and be able to deal with those situations as needed. But this is a bit of a mistake, and maybe as a tilt factor, this is something also to take into account, is how much tilt is building up in the game. Like, you just had 2 rounds in a row where it felt like really close, at least for me, right, in this situation. Second round felt like we didn't trade appropriately. We went down, but now I'm making pretty big mistakes. Not rooting all of these pets is a really big mistake. Like, these pets are getting way too much value. These pets needed to be rooted and removed from the fight as soon as possible. We managed to just kind of brute force our way through it with Tree of Life. Now we're hotting up the rogue. Again, stuns are a really good indicator that that target is getting attacked. So whether or not you're looking for yourself as a DPS player to know what to do, if you're getting stunned, there's a high chance you're going to get attacked and take a lot of damage. So you should always look at the stun and then look at the cast bars. And I was like, oh, Chaos Bolt, Hand of Gul'dan, Mind Blast. Like, that's a lot of damage being cast at the same time, likely towards the target that is stunned. So we need to get as much healing out as possible. We're going to reposition back here towards the pillar so we can line of sight crowd control a bit more easily. But it's kind of rough with the positioning that we've got with the rogue on our team against 2 warlocks, because we're going to have to chase the rogue every once in a while to be able to be in a position to keep him going. Seems like we're being really aggro here onto the priest. So if we're going to be really aggro, I need to be with my team. I need to be right beside them. I jump towards the rogue and I Tranquility Shield. The main reason for this is to reset some of my cooldowns, more importantly my Tree of Life, but also because I'm near the priest and I want immune Psychic Scream. Maybe I could have greeted this slightly to make it less obvious for the priest to use their fear, because the priest doesn't use fear. They're holding it until the end of the tranquility. But because we're next to the pets, look, immediately broken out of that fear from all the pet AoE damage. So against Emo Lock, stand near the pets, any sort of pet classes, DKs, that type of deal. I think standing next to the person being attacked is a great idea, just because it's going to break you out of the crowd control if you're expecting that crowd control onto yourself. And that allows us to continue being able to free heal. The down trade is that you're going to take some damage, but at least you get to heal because you're not crowd controlled, so you should be able to recover. Also, having life bloom on yourself and frenzied regen is really good as a resto druid, so I don't really mind, but we end up randomly dying, so maybe it is a problem. So right here, how could we have not had this situation happen? So this is likely a lapse of awareness on my part, probably an accumulation of tilt from the 2 previous rounds, or an overconfidence thing, to assume that I was going to be able to survive in that situation. I'm trying to get us back to that point. So what ultimately went wrong here? I thought that we were playing aggressive because we had gotten every cooldown from the priest. I thought that we were going to be kind of going all in. So I was still like playing up here with my team, trying to play aggressive. Priest manages to sneak away from the pillar. I'm thinking that we're going to play aggressive. We're pretty recovered. But what ends up happening is our rogue just bails. Our rogue shadow steps away from the warlock, which means now these two warlocks are free casting. And I don't think I was aware of this because it felt like we were just playing really aggressively. We just got the trinket. We still got Iron Bark. We still got Nature Swiftness. Like we're in a pretty healthy situation. They don't have any offensive cooldowns. So running away doesn't actually make the most amount of sense. But sometimes you need to adapt to a situation that doesn't make any sense because people aren't going to they're not going to make the right decisions all the time. So if I had noticed this, I shouldn't be standing here. 100% I shouldn't be standing here. And this is something that when you're watching your VOD, maybe you don't know what to look for to improve. Look at where you're standing and just ask yourself, like pause the video like this, okay? I'm here. These warlocks are here. They can both cast on me. My teammates can't do anything because they're back here. This is why awareness towards where your teammates are is going to be really important because right here, they end up getting a swap to me. Like, why am I here? I'm here because I thought the rogue was still out here, but I was looking at something else. And this is why like overall view of the screen, overall awareness of the screen is something that's really going to improve your gameplay. If you're only looking here because you're a healer or you're only looking here because you're a DPS, you miss this situation and it's going to end up costing you your life. You end up getting shadow furied and you end up getting blasted down here because there's no pressure going out towards the enemy team. And we're just going to fall over. So this is what I mean by going back in the VODs, looking at the games that you lost, right? Now, some of these you could blame on circumstance of like, hey, it's just solo shuffle, but you don't want to just jump to that. You don't want to just jump to that immediately. Usually it's an easy emotional response. I'm guilty of it too. But it's important to go back, look at it, analyze it, see what you could do personally to improve any given situation. Even if your teammates are trolling or are feeding you or doing the incorrect thing, you need to be able to adapt to what they're doing. And that is the most important thing in solo shuffle is being able to identify what they're doing, adapt to it, and then adjust your play based on it. Sometimes you get bad lobbies, right? Sometimes it's just not a winnable situation, but you still want to try to make the best with whatever you're given because your opponents aren't necessarily machines. They might make mistakes. If they make mistakes, you might be able to win those situations. But if you're already kind of like throwing it out, you're giving up that opportunity for them to possibly make a mistake and to get as many gains as you can possibly get. But that was the main importance of the video, is to be looking at your games, record them. You can get OBS. There's free software to record it. You could even stream privately on Twitch and then go back and look at your VODs. That's another way you could do it because maybe you don't want your games publicly viewed. You don't want anybody judging you or anything like that. I totally understand it. So you can do that as a private stream on Twitch or get some free software, record yourself, go back and look at what you're doing. Main things to look at is like, where's your trinket usage? Where's your cooldowns and where are you standing? And where do you think you're looking on the screen? Honestly, getting like an eye tracker, I think could be really cool for myself personally. Like, where was I looking that I didn't notice this? Now, obviously, it's very subtle. Rogue Shadow Step is not very obvious animation and him running around the corner, right? But if I had an eye tracker, I'd be able to be like, oh, I was tunnel visioning this. So I need to be more mindful of keeping my eyes moving, right? Like your eyes should always be moving, honestly, in a circle. So that kind of like your peripheral vision is picking up on things like, oh, Chaos Bolt's being casted. Oh, the Hunter has no defensives. Oh, the Priest is moving in. So if your eyes are always kind of like moving around the screen to certain locations, like they bounce like basically like triangulating and what do I need to know from here? What do I need to know from here? What do I need to know from here? It'll be constantly gathering you information, and keeping your vision high is going to be really important. But other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it to improve your gameplay. So hopefully you can get unstuck and hopefully you can start climbing, because I do think this is the #1 thing. Other than that, thank you for watching the video, and I will catch you in the next one.